I left for this last video some topics which are more abstract, or you could call them advanced. And it may be useful to you if you ponder about them later and do your own research into them. As soon as you start using your left hand fingers, you will learn about the different notes and how they are represented in a musical score. Following a sequence of notes on the scale, up or down, starting from a given note, you will get back to the same note again at the 8th note. For example, you play the open G string, then an A follows, then a B and C, and if you are doing it in the first position, you will switch to the D string, following with E, F, and then again G. These groups of 8 notes are called octaves, precisely because they group a sequence of 8 notes. The G in the example, played in the open string, and the G and the D string are not identically the same, because the sound frequency is not the same, but they have something in common that relates those notes and sets them apart from the other notes. It is that the same notes in different octaves will correspond to a frequency that is a multiple, more precisely a power of 2, of the lowest of the tones. So, in reality, they are all different notes, so the same designation, A, B, C, and so on, is what in mathematics we call an equivalence class, a grouping of different stuff based on adopted criteria. In this case, to be more specific, it's an equivalence class module 8. This is also why sometimes there can be ambiguity in representing a note in a music score, just by placing its time value on the scale, which happens when the note can actually be played with different fingerings, on the same, but more often on different strings. Now, a big part of your effort, since you start using your left hand when playing, will be spent in memorizing to what a given note on a scale translates to in the violin. More specifically, it will determine which string you tackle with the bow, and which left hand finger to use and its place on the string. You cannot play music while at the same time trying to figure out how to play the next note, because you have to respect the time value of each note, which doesn't give you room for much, if any, thinking. Here, some regularities or patterns can be of use to you as a mnemonic, such as for example in the first position. Your fourth finger plays the same note as the next open string. Also, in every string, the second finger is the only one that can assume 2 positions, either closer to the first or to the third finger. Finally, each finger has the same positions in all strings. So, look for the patterns or regularities in everything, aiming to memorize only those and their variations, instead of every possible combination. It's also useful to memorize the places for the open strings between the score lines, and also for the first finger. I use them still all the time when playing the other notes, meaning that when I am reading a music score, I am not looking at every note isolated, but I use its context to determine how I need to play the notes. But another way, I just memorize the bare minimum information I need to be able to play all the notes, as opposite to memorizing every single one of them. To develop this context reading, it is useful to practice scales, in which you run all the notes upwards and downwards of the scale. After that, you can expand to broken chords, in which you skip several notes in between. Besides those references, another thing that can help you is to play random notes, that is, unrelated notes, the same way we use flashcards when studying. When I was at that stage, I made a simple application for Microsoft Windows to do that. It displays random notes at a constant time rate, and you can increase that frequency to try to play a more rapid sequence of notes. You can get the app from the reference number 5 in this video description. Just like learning to drive a car, you will at first be paying attention to every little detail, and later you will have automated, complex behaviors, so that you can be thinking and, not less importantly, feeling what you are doing when playing. You will also have to anticipate, for example, prepare the fingers for the next notes, or watch for a sudden change in the composition. To finish this topic of using the left-hand fingers, you may find at the beginning that it hurts your fingertips to press the strings like a little hammer so many times. This is normal because our skin is thin and sensitive at the fingertips. To be honest, when I went through this stage, I had to use small band-aids in some fingers at some point, as an alternative to stop practicing. However, you can rest assured that this will not last very long, because in time your skin will get thicker due to a sort of a callus formation at the points of contact with the strings. And then you will be able to play as much as you like, without hurting your fingers. Now, just as soon as you are able to play any note in the first position, immediately, without thinking, you should start thinking about the quality of the sound you make. There are many ways to play a given note. One of them will produce the natural sound, and the others will be what is called ornaments, or also called embellishments. Ornaments are deviations from the natural sound the instrument makes, made intentionally with aesthetic purposes. Examples are the trill, which is performed with the left hand, and the martelet, which is performed with the bow, or the right hand. Be sure to get familiar with the natural sounds before practicing any ornaments, because, by definition, you will have a better notion of the result you need to achieve with the ornaments. The natural sound will be your reference. It will also help you when playing more than one note at a time, which is called double stops, in which case you need to perceive how well you are sounding each note separately. The natural sound is not just what you do when you scratch the bow against the string. Professor Leopold in Maya Bang's violin method described it as a pure and singing tone, and stated that achieving that expression should be one of our goals as beginners. Of course, this is all about developing the use of the right hand. As I mentioned earlier, one of your biggest challenges for the first years alone will be to keep your wrist flexible, loose, while executing precise movements at precise moments. I am still developing this capability, although naturally, after 3 years and a half, I narrowed my needs comparatively to earlier stages. A stiff wrist will be your major roadblock to develop bowing and the correct production of tones. But the particularities of the bow constitution and handling are also not there to make it easy for you. It starts with how you hold the bow, which you should do in the most natural, therefore relaxed and effortless way. Please refer to my article about this subject, which is the reference number 6 in this video description. This article also addresses the fundamental differences between using the left and right hand, and it is useful that you are aware of it in order to improve. As for playing the bow, I found that a specific exercise really helped me boosting the quality of the tones in my playing. I actually still use it in my warm-up. I play a series of broken chords in 2 ways. First, very slowly, and afterwards very fast. When I play slowly, I use the whole bow, from tip to nut, and the reason why this is helpful is that it allows you to really feel and understand what you are doing. You will notice that the bow doesn't weight the same at different points of contact with the string. You will notice that it does not help you much keeping the wrist rigid and in the same position during the entire bow stroke. You will understand that in order to produce a natural sound, you need to make several adjustments and changes as you slide the bow on the string. Here I am pointing at what those adjustments are addressing. The main driver for this need to adjust is the fact that the bow does not exert the same pressure at every point over the string, coupled with the fact that you are holding it in one of its extremities. If you do the experiment, you'll see that the weight of the tip of the bow alone is sufficient to produce a good tone, although it may not suffice to start the string vibrating. On the opposite side, at the nut of the bow, the pressure is far greater and exceeds what is required for a good tone. You will have to compensate for this by holding the bow lightly when playing at the tip and by almost zeroing the weight of the bow at the nut. Playing the bow slowly will allow you to understand these changes in pressure, guided by the objective that is to produce a natural and even tone during the entire bow stroke. Your listener cannot have any idea of what part of the bow you are playing with at any moment, and more than that, even changes of direction of stroke should not be perceivable, although this one is a bit more advanced. Now do this experiment. Hold your forearm in the air horizontally with the back of your hand in the same plane. With the other hand, grab a finger and try to pull the hand down while trying to keep the hand and the forearm leveled. What happens to your wrist? It gets stiffer. It is the only way to counter the added weight in this case. A rigid wrist is the opposite of what you need, whatever it is that you are doing with the bow. Now, instead of keeping your hand in line with your horizontal forearm, let it fall loose and then again push it down by a finger with the other hand. Could you counter the added weight? Yes, but this time only with the forearm. You didn't need to use your wrist to do it. In fact, if while you are pulling your finger down, you try to shake the hand, it will move and that changes nothing to the net weight. You can still compensate for the other weight. This is why you should change the angle that your right hand does relative to the forearm, depending on which part of the bow rests on the string. When playing at the tip, your right hand will be above the line of your forearm. But when playing at the nut, your hand should be, as in the experiments, falling loose down your wrist, compensating the added weight with the least effort and impact on the wrist flexibility. Now do this very slowly, many times, and then when you increase the speed of stroke, you'll notice that you are already playing much better at normal speeds. This gets more complicated with the fact that each string has slightly different properties. You will notice when performing the proposed exercise that the higher the tension that the string rests under, the easier it is to get it to respond to the bow stroke as soon as it touches the string, or what is also called the attack of the bow. This means that, for example, setting the G string in motion requires you to add a little more pressure on your attack than does the E string, where you can make it sound almost just by touching it. Now factor in this also the part of the bow you are using to attack the string. Try, for example, attacking the open G string and then the open E string with the tip of the bow. You will need more pressure for the G string. On the other hand, you'll notice that you are equally successful at attacking the G string at the nut of the bow and the E string at the tip, pretty much with the same effort. As for the version of the exercise played very rapidly, do it only when you are comfortable using the whole bow in legato, that is, playing several notes in the same stroke, and the more of them you can cover, the better. Do it also after you are improving in the slow mode, because in this case, you'll have much less time to perceive and to respond to adjustments. They will be nearly instantaneous, and this is a good way for you to check whether you are already automating the required behaviors. But again, do not make haste. You will most certainly spend years doing this and improving at it. If you listen to entire classical pieces that you liked before, You must have noticed that the more you listen to it, the more you get to know it. Every time you find some nuance that is new, despite it being the end time listening to the piece. With your practice, it will be the same. Do not stop once it sounds good enough. Keep insisting for some time more, and you will discover room for improvement and new insights about it. Another useful exercise dealing with the bow weight is to play the open strings using only a few fingers width of the hair at the nut. Try not scratching the strings and get a smooth transition between them. You will notice that this routine gives you confidence in using the whole bow while you play, and that is very useful for improving in general playing. We have covered challenges for the left and the right hand. But another hurdle for you will be to coordinate them precisely when playing. If you delay placing your finger on the string when the bow is already moving, you will hear several tones or even several notes instead of a timely, single, natural sound. A simple exercise you can do to get better at this is to play in each string a series of quick notes, first using the same finger, alternating notes, and afterwards going up and down on the scale. Here, try to stick to a fixed tempo each time, and alternate slower with faster tempos. When you can hear each note distinctly and for the right duration, then you will have achieved your goal. Finally, and to close this video series, let's get back to what we did in the third part of the practice session. As you recall, this is the exploratory part. No agenda, no goal, no standard. Everything goes. Everything you do here is valid and useful. This is where you can develop feeling what you are doing on one hand, and expressing yourself with the violin on the other. It's a closed loop that always revolves and adds value to your development and personal experience. This is also where you grow on the subjective, emotional side of understanding and playing music, the realm that I said before that I will leave for you to explore. One thing that I encourage you to experiment is doing transcriptions for violin of themes that you have selected to explore. They may be pieces written for violin already, for other instruments, or compositions in different genres than those you usually play with a stringed instrument. The common ground here is that you are not reading from a score, but just listening and playing it on the violin. This is in fact a way for you to start practicing composing, which you will be delighted to try once you are already familiar with expressing a broader enough range of themes and moods on the violin from your exercises. In my website, you can see me playing several transcriptions, ranging from classical pieces to heavy metal and even bird singing. I explore the originals by listening, and I explore the violin to reproduce a version of it that match my understanding of the piece, my level of expertise, and my taste. As a side note, I decided to not write down my transcriptions in order to explore them just by playing them in the development phase, while relying on my memory is also useful for gaining expertise. The memory here is not just conceptual, it is also motor. This also naturally gave room for improvements on my work because every time I played the theme I would change something in the composition, for the better of course. As for composing, here's my take on it. While when you practice, you are feeling what you are doing, when you compose, you are translating what you feel into directives for actions. Therefore, once you have gone through a sufficiently rich emotional experience by playing, you will be able to do the reverse, that is, exploring a theme and expressing your vision of it as music. This is why I believe that composing is not something reserved for the highly educated in music or the naturally gifted, if such a thing even exists. Expressing yourself in musical terms may in fact be a naturally innate capability. I again suggest you explore this subject, for example by reading the before mentioned book The Perfect Wrong Note by William Westley. My advice is to start by simple themes expressed in a simple way. Elaborate and convoluted is not in the definition of music. Try for example to listen to Franz Liszt's Sancta Dorothea and even Vexilla Regis Prodens. Usually, romantic or religious themes will be a good reference for you at this. I composed a music called Smile of a Woman, based on this theme, on a romantic naturalist perspective. You can watch it following the reference number 7 in this video description. This is it for this video series about learning the violin for adult beginners. I hope that you liked it and that it may be useful in your learning. Feel free to share your opinion or experiences about this in the comments, or leave a question for me or other people watching the videos. Thank you very much, and I wish you have a wonderful journey in music and that you can achieve your goals.